Hello guys, Charles here and welcome back to my channel. So triads are really important, and everyone from Dave Liebman, Tim Miller and even esen have talked about how triads are really essential to creating that modern sound. And so the difficulty most of us face, and I certainly have faced this in the past, is we're familiar with the sound of a triad. We've got major, minor, diminished and augmented. Yet as soon as we put them in a different context, they lose their recognizability. And so today we're going to look at superimposing triads over a fixed bass note and moving the triads through a chromatic sequence. Now, the two things that were most effective for me in terms of actually learning to hear these sounds was, first of all, the most important one, which you can do straight away without even watching this video, is just start trying to use them. Start trying to incorporate these in your arrangements. And maybe decide this week you're going to do lots of major triad superimpositions. And any chord that you've got in an arrangement, you're going to try and voice it using a major triad over a bass note. That would be a very good place to start. Now, the other way to do this, of course, is through a series of different exercises. And one of them that was really helpful for me is what I want to share with you today. So without further ado, let's dive straight into it. So I'm going to do all these on the fixed root of A, and I'm going to start with an A major triad over A, and we're going to go up over every chromatic tone until we get back to A. So we're going to hear what all 12 of them sound like over that bass note of A. Now, that's a good place to start. However, what we're trying to do here is learn to differentiate these between the ones that sound consonant and the ones that sound dissonant. This very first one, an A major triad over an A root note, of course sounds lovely and consonant. Now the very next one would be upper semitone, would be B flat over an A root. Now, although we are familiar with those notes, it's a B flat major 7 chord really, we've got B flat, D, F and A, it sounds dissonant to most of us. It sounds very dissonant. And so the purpose of this exercise is learn to find the dissonant ones and learn to hear them as a suspension of one of the consonant ones. So learn to hear that as a movement. And that's going to be a lot easier to recognize it by the movement it's going to do. And eventually, you'll just recognize it as an element in its own right. And we can do the same from the opposite direction. So this is just really chromatic approach. So I can go to an A flat, which is a lovely sounding chord in its own right, but it's definitely a dissonance. And so we need to learn to hear that dissonance of A flat over A or G sharp over A as rising upwards to A. And we're going to do this with all the dissonant ones, so let's keep going. So the next one, again, might be a chord you recognise in its own right. This is like a B triad over A. Now, that's a chord that I'm very familiar with anyway, and I would recognise it, but I appreciate that isn't a chord that everyone would recognise. So we need to hear that as a dissonance for this exercise. And that's going to rise up to C major triad over A. Now a C major triad over A sounds very familiar to us because it's just an A minor 7 chord. So B over A. We've learned to hear it as a chromatic approach to the minor. This is not going to happen straight away. You're going to have to work on this. You're going to have to learn to hear, listen to this chord, and in your head hear where it's going. Now again, we could approach that same C over A from above. So we could do D flat or C sharp over A. Lovely sound, major 7 sharp 5, which we've talked about a lot on this channel. But again, it's definitely a dissonance. So it can fall. Now that same dissonance, that can also rise up to the next one, which is consonant, which is a D over A. So this is just a second inversion D chord. So learning to hear that one, either going down or going up. Next, E flat over A. Again, falling down to that D. So we really want to feel these dissonant ones as having like a magnetic pull. That needs to go somewhere. And like I say, eventually you'll be able to hear it as a sound in its own right, and it won't have to go anywhere. But the purpose of this exercise is to first of all categorize them as dissonants. Next up would be E over A. All this. So that actually sounds quite nice to us because it's basically a major 9 chord. So if you're happy with that sound, then by all means think of it as a consonance. However, I'm going to think of that as a dissonance because it is a bit hollow. So that's going to move up to the very next one, which is going to be F over A. And you hear in that context, this now sounds like a dissonance. This now sounds like it has to go to there. So this F over A, again, it's just a first inversion major chord. So a lot of these triadic superimpositions over a fixed bass note are just chords we're already familiar with. So we're on F over A. F sharp over A. Now that is a beautiful altered chord. But again, it's definitely dissonant. Now this one's going to rise up or fall down. Many of these will have different options. You need to learn to hear them going both ways, but this falls nicely to F. So F sharp, next G. So we've got G over A. Now it's up to you, this one. I think of this one as consonant because it's such a common sound, this like A11 chord. We hear that sound all the time, so I'm happy to think of this one as consonant, but again, this is just my interpretation of this exercise. It's completely up to you. So we can approach G over A from F sharp over A. Or from above, G sharp over A. And then that G sharp can take us back to A. So that's just one of many exercises we can do to train our ears here. But again, this is an ear training exercise. This is not a technical exercise by any stretch of the imagination. The point here is to assign some sort of labeling to what you're hearing. Rather than just randomly hearing triads over roots, try and understand it on some slightly deeper level. Now, the easiest way to do that is start to use categorisation. Humans are brilliant at categorising things, so start to try and hear those in different categories. Now, we only did major triads today, and I'd suggest you start with exclusively major triads. There's no point in trying to do all 48 different triad superimpositions because that's just overwhelming. So at least try and master the major ones, and you'll find those major ones can be used in all sorts of different settings. But all we're trying to do is every single time we work through these, no matter what exercise we're doing, we're trying to categorize them in a recognizable and understandable fashion, rather than just hearing them as this endless list of triadic superimpositions. So I hope you get on all right with that exercise. If you found this one useful, please do give the video a like, subscribe, ding that notification bell, and share with any of your friends who might find this useful as well. And as always, I hope you're all doing very well, getting plenty of practice in, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers!
Roll up, let me embed a story you'll never forget. A drip, drip, but drowning in debt now. You can't buy your way out, and I heard you find it difficult to cope.